Hey y'all, what's up? How we doing out there, my friends from YouTube? It's time for another quarterback review. And so we've made it through all the way past the Carolina Panthers. And let me tell you, this next team I'm going to be talking about, their quarterback is the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so we all know that the Cincinnati Bengals quarterback is none other than Joe Burrow. And well, Joe Burrow has only been in the NFL for 2 seasons thus far, but they're two fairly impressive seasons. Now, his first season with the Bengals was not that great, in terms of his production and how the team did. I believe they only went 2-14 or something like that. In 2020, it was close to that. It was not great. But then last year, the team turned around like stupendously, amazingly. They were just they were one of the quite literally one of the best teams in the NFL, and they made it to the Super Bowl last year, and nobody expected that. Everybody kind of expected, oh, the Bengals will probably do okay. They'll probably be like maybe like a second or third place team in the AFC North. Um, you know, they'll be a team that maybe might get to like a wild card game in the playoffs or something. That's kind of what people expected from the Bengals last year. No one really expected them to almost win the Super Bowl. And they did almost win it against the Rams. They just didn't. They fell short. For the first 3 quarters of the game, it looked like they were going to win. And then fourth quarter rolls around and the Rams make a comeback. And it's like, well, there goes your Super Bowl hopes for at least a year. Bengals, good luck next time. It's not going to be as easy this time, I don't think. I think the Bengals have slipped down to about, sixth in the power rankings. They're still a fairly good team. But the thing is, a lot of the reason for that is Joe Burrow. Right. So let's talk about the Bengals for a second because this is very important. Okay, this is very important. So 2020 Bengals. So you'll notice that they were just a horrible team in 2020, right? Uh, well, this is not. This is this year. Because this year starts today. By the way, Thursday night football will be tonight. The Bills and the Rams. So the Bengals in 2020 went 4-11-1, and that was actually better than the year before. Where I think I was talking about the year before, 2019, where the team went literally 2-14. So yeah, the Bengals had it rough before Joe Burrow got there, and even after he got there, he only really increased their win total by 2 and decreased their win total by, was it 3? Yes, yeah, 3. Because that one tie, who I forget who the tie was against, but the Bengals are a team that actually frequently has gotten ties. Ironically, a lot of the ties in the NFL over the last few years have been Cincinnati Bengals games. I'm not sure how it's worked out that way, but it has. And the thing is, 2019 for the Bengals was Andy Dalton's last season in Cincinnati. He's currently on the Chicago Bears as a backup to Justin Fields. Um, that being said, 2019 was a much better year for the Ravens than it was last year. Uh, and just a much better year for the AFC North, I think, overall, than it was years ago. And then you look at the thing is here back. This is before Joe Burrow, so this is before Joe Burrow, and then 2020 rolls around. Joe Burrow does help the team out a little bit, but not like a whole lot. Like they go for 11-1. Now the thing is, the Bengals' offensive line, if anyone remembers this, like the Bengals offensive line in 2020 was absolute trash. And it was absolute trash for like multiple seasons. Like I think the last time that the Bengals had a decent offensive line, you would have to go back to like 2017. Right. And even back then, the Bengals still ended up going 7-9 with Andy Dalton as quarterback. And even back then, their offensive line was mediocre at best. And if you go back to 2016, they were still a mediocre team, right? 2017, 2018, the Bengals were, mediocre in 2018 as well. So, I mean, even if you go back to 2015, they were a good team in 2015. But that was the last time they really even made the playoffs, is 2015, up until last year, of course, when they won the Super Bowl. But the thing is, the Bengals they didn't even win a playoff game in 2015, right? That was the thing, though. Back in 2015, the whole deal of the Bengals was, they can get to the playoffs, but they just can't win, right? Andy Dalton was famous for being great in the regular season for the most part. In the early part of his career, Andy Dalton was great in the regular season, and then Bengals would get to the playoffs, and then they would lose. They would lose the first game they played in the playoffs every time without fail. That's how it was. And the thing is, like 2015, they're good. 2016, mediocre. 17, mediocre. 18, mediocre. 19, mediocre. Right? Well, real, actually, it was bad in 2019, it was bad. And then 2020, they were bad again. So the thing is, in the back half of the 2000s, well, not even the 2000s, the back half of the 2000 teens, the Bengals were bad. Like from like 2011 to 2015, they were a pretty good team when Andy Dalton was the quarterback. And then after 2015, something happened. I don't know what happened to Andy Dalton, or if it was the Bengals overall, or if it was Marvin Lewis. Because Marvin Lewis, who is the coach of the Bengals now? I don't even remember. I think it's Zach something. I don't know. But Marvin Lewis got fired after the 2019 season, and then they got this new guy named Zach, and he's like, I mean, he's actually pretty good. His first season was this 2020 season, but smartly, the Bengals did something that I think the Browns need to understand, or as we'll call them for the purposes of this video. Um, the Browns, the Cleveland Clowns, basically. They deserve that name. They deserve the name of the Cleveland Clowns. I'm a Ravens fan, so I tend to hate on the rest of the AFC North. But the thing is, out of all the teams in the AFC North, the Bengals are probably my favorite one outside of the Ravens. I'm a Ravens fan, so of course, to me, like I don't like any of the AFC North teams. But if I had to pick one team that I could potentially root for if the Ravens didn't exist, that was in the AFC North, it would be the Bengals. Just because A, I went to college there, and B, I know people from the Cincinnati area that root for them. So for me, it's kind of like, I have a connection to the Bengals that I don't have with the rest of the teams in the AFC North. And I would never root for the Steelers unless they were the only football team on earth. And then at that point, it would be like, okay, well, there's no point rooting for you guys anyway because you're the only team that exists. And the thing is, the Browns, like I said, I hate the Browns more than I do the Bengals for a lot of reasons. The Cleveland Clowns are just trash overall. And the thing is, the Clowns have been clowns for a very long time. And the thing is, people don't seem to care about that. But the thing is, to understand the quarterback, you have to understand the team. The Bengals were mediocre for seasons, and then 2019 came around, and they were a bottom of the barrel team. And then, last year, or 2 years ago, I should say at this point, 2 years ago they went 4-11, and then last year they go a respectable 10-7, make the playoffs as a looking like fourth seed here because they won the AFC North with that record. The Ravens were heavily injured. The Clowns were the Clowns. That's just how it is. And the Steelers somehow squeaked into the playoffs with a 9-7 at 9-7-1 record. The thing is though, why what happens with the Bengals to make them so much better in one season. So the thing is, I think Joe Burrow is a big factor. Okay, I think he is a big factor as to why the Bengals were so good last year. They made it to the Super Bowl. They didn't win, but they made it. They were the second best team in the NFL last year. So, you can't just go from 4-11-1 to going into the Super Bowl without some major changes happening. Now, Joe Burrow was on that 4-11-1 team. People forget about that. He was. He was on that 4-11-1 team. The thing is, though, he was a rookie that season. And these are his rookie numbers, right? His rookie season was 2020, which I don't know if you guys know this. There was no preseason that year. All right, the NFL just canceled preseason in 2020 altogether. They canceled it altogether because of COVID. So not only that, but Joe Burrow came into the NFL at the same time COVID was happening. So Joe Burrow came into the NFL. He was a rookie. He had no preseason, so he had to make the team based on just training camp alone. And then he makes the team on just training camp alone. In his first season, he has to deal with COVID and being on a bad team. The Bengals were the worst team in 2020, I believe. They were. They had the number one overall pick. They had the number one overall pick in 2020. They were quite literally the worst team. And they drafted Joe Burrow for their number one overall pick. And it was a good number one overall pick. Joe Burrow was the correct pick, number one overall in 2020. But man, you look at these stats, and they're not that great, but they're not that bad. I mean, 2,688 yards. By the way, Joe Burrow did not even start the entire season because he got injured at, I can't remember at what point he got injured, but he got injured at, like, I think around maybe like week 8 or 9, and they came back like 4 or 5 weeks later, but he did not play the entire season. So these are not a full season's numbers. 65% completion percentage is really freaking good. And then you have 2,688 yards. That's actually really good when you consider he didn't even start the whole season. 13 touchdowns and 5 interceptions is also really good, right? These are good numbers for a guy who's a rookie, and for a guy who didn't even start the whole season, and for a guy who had a trash offensive line, and for a guy that had just. The Bengals' defense was awful in 2020. Dude, the Bengals are they were ridiculously bad in 2020 as a team. But the thing is, it wasn't Joe Burrow's fault. Like I said, his offensive line was basically paper in 2020. The Bengals' defense was trash. They were basically the worst defense in the NFL in 2020. The Bengals overall were just god awful in 2020. And the thing is, like, you're not gonna have Joe Mixon putting up the numbers that he did last year when your offensive line is that trash. And you're not gonna have the same. You don't have Jamar Chase yet in 2020, which is a big deal considering the fact that he's like the team's leading receiver now. So I think Joe Burrow, for what he had in 2020, did the best he could with what he had. The Bengals were really a sad sack of guys back in 2020. They were really bad, right? They were just not good. Then 2021, the Bengals made some clutch free agent moves. They made some good. They had some more good draft picks. They drafted Jamar Chase. They bolstered up that defense, bolstered up that offensive line. Things clicked together. You win 10 games, you lose 7 games, you make it to the playoffs, and you win the AFC North. So you win the AFC North, you make it to the playoffs, you continue winning playoff games in the playoffs, and make it all the way to the Super Bowl, and almost beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. I think they lost by like 4 points. So you almost won the Super Bowl in your second season. I think that says a lot about Joe Burrow, right? I think it does. You look at his stats last year, they're really impressive. 4,611 yards, 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and 108 quarterback rating. And his career so far, 7,299 yards, 47 touchdowns to only 19 interceptions, by the way. 19 interceptions in 2 years is not bad. That is not bad. But you consider, like, this first season is 16 games, the second one is 17. But it's a little bit less than that for him. Like, it's probably more like, I don't know. That's like, I'm gonna do the quick math. I mean, we could actually look up Joe Burrow win loss record. I mean, it's gonna be pretty good, I would think. I can't be right. Actually, it could be. Actually, it could be. Joe Burrow does have a losing record, but that's gonna change this year. I guarantee. Because you know, you got to remember that first season was not that good, right? So he is 12, 13, and 1 in his career, but for what the Bengals were when he got there, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for the Bengals, like 12, 13, and 1. Like, he's a little bit under 500, but that's not that bad if you think about it for like what the Bengals are. Exactly. So Joe Burrow 12, 13, and 1. So he's played total. What's 12 plus 13 is 25, right? And then plus 1 is 26. Let me make sure I got that right. 12, 13 plus 12 is 25, plus 1 is 26. Yeah, calculator says I'm right. So he's played 26 games and only thrown 19 interceptions. That's not too bad. That's the regular season stats, I believe. That's not even postseason. So you add four dubs. Wait, unless that did count postseason. Let me see if it did. Yeah, that does count postseason. Okay, so that's wait, no, it doesn't. Does it? It doesn't. It's not showing the Rams here. That's where it is. I don't think it shows the Super Bowl on here. It does show like the Ravens game. It only shows the regular season games on here. So this is regular season only. So he's actually got 3 more wins in the postseason if you count postseason. So add on 3 wins to this, and it's actually 15, 13, and 1. Because we count postseason ones around here too. But this is regular season career. All right. If you add in playoffs, it's a little bit different, right? If you add in playoffs, he is a 3-1 because he's got four playoff games because he had to play 4 because you count the wild card game they had to play, which the Bengals would have had home field advantage. I forget who they play against that. Then divisional round, then AFC Championship against the Chiefs, and then after that you would have the Rams in the Super Bowl. So I mean that's 4 games, but he's three. That's the other thing. Joe Burrow's got a 3-1 playoff record and a Super Bowl start now. So you're talking about a guy that he didn't win the Super Bowl, but he's been to the Super Bowl, and we could be talking about like maybe like the next like John Elway or something like that. That's the thing. It's like John Elway made it to a lot of Super Bowls. He didn't really win all of them, but he made it to a lot of them. I think he won 2 of them though. And I think eventually Joe Burrow and the Bengals will win a Super Bowl, but I don't think it's gonna be this next year. They got a lot harder of a schedule this year, obviously, as the Super Bowl team. Their schedule gets a lot harder. You can see the first game is against the Steelers, who, honest to God, I think they'll win that game because let's be real, the Steelers are going to be a little bit of a slouch team this year. But I mean, that's just because they're starting Mitchell Trubisky, who we'll get to eventually when we talk about the Steelers. I think overall, there is an S tier, uh, in this this ranking. Overall, I don't think Joe Burrow has really done enough to earn S tier, but I think he's A plus. I'll give Joe Burrow, I'll give him a solid A plus. I think he's probably the best quarterback we talked about thus far, and I do actually believe that Joe Burrow is better than Lamar Jackson, even as a Ravens fan. Especially if like last season Lamar kind of fallen off a little bit last season. If I think they're this close though. Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow are this close in terms of talent that I kind of have to give them the slight edge goes to Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow is 2-2 against Lamar Jackson. They played 4 games against each other. The Ravens swept the Bengals the first year, and the Bengals swept the Ravens last year. A lot of that might have had to do with the Ravens' injuries last year. That's the thing. The Ravens are not an injured team this year. Okay, that's the other thing too. Is the Bengals got a harder schedule this season than they did last year. They got a Ravens rival that's not going to be as injured. They got well, honestly, I don't think they need to worry about the clowns, but and I don't think they need to worry about the Steelers. The real rivalry this year in the AFC North is going to be the Ravens and the Bengals, and I think anybody that follows the NFL realistically knows that. Um, but that's it. I'm gonna grade Joe Burrow at an A plus. I don't think it's quite S tier material. There are a couple of guys who I think later down the line might be ranked S tier. I'm looking at a couple of guys that I think I could put in S tier. Uh, yeah, later down the line. I guess the Titans will be the last team I talk about, but yeah, no. But I think that's it for the Bengals. Tomorrow I'll try to do one on the Bears quarterback Justin Fields. Um, and he's going to be an interesting one because I don't know what I'm going to talk about with him because he is only this is his second year in the NFL, and there's not really a whole lot to talk about with Justin Fields, but we can still figure it out though. He's going to be a hard one to grade though. But yeah, I think A tier quarterback for Joe Burrow. All right, peace out, y'all. Hope you all have a great rest of the day.